My son betrayed me at his wedding. You won't believe what I did. The silence after Richard's death was deafening, but it was the greed that followed that truly shattered me. 30 years of marriage, a life built together, and then this. My sons, James and Oliver, descending like vultures over what they perceived was rightfully theirs. But it wasn't just about the money, was it? It was about respect, about loyalty, about the very foundation of our family. This isn't a story I ever wanted to tell, but I need to know, after everything that transpired, did I do the right thing? At a rehearsal dinner, my son laughed. He called her out in her underwear. I came to their wedding and wished them a happy future, but little did they know. We had our ups and downs, but those 30 years flew by like they were nothing. Our house. We managed to buy a couple of apartments over the years. Life seemed set on a good path. Eleanor, we need to talk, he said, his voice grave as he dropped his medical bag by the door. Had some tests done last week. The results came back. It's cancer, Eleanor. The months that followed were a brutal blur of hospital visits, grueling treatments, and endless, soul-crushing waiting rooms. Richard fought with every ounce of strength he had, but no amount of medical training prepares you for watching the person you love most slowly slip away. One evening, as we sat quietly in the living room, Richard took my hand, his eyes filled with a quiet understanding. Eleanor, if things don't go our way, you need to make sure everything's sorted with the boys, the wheels all done, you'll be fine financially. Not long after, he was gone. The funeral was a somber affair, filled with family and friends paying their respects. But it was the haunting quiet at home afterward that truly hit me the hardest. Empty spaces where Richard used to be, his things just where he left them, each object a painful reminder of the life we had built, the love we had shared. The ache was unbearable. Just a few days after the funeral, I was in the kitchen, trying to make sense of the leftover food, when James stormed in, his face twisted with anger and worrying. Oliver trailed behind, looking like he wanted to be anywhere but there. Mom, we need to talk about Dad's will, James said, cutting straight to the chase as he always did. Yes, I know, I replied wearily. Your father left everything to me. He wanted to make sure I was taken care of. James slammed his hand on the counter, the force of it making me jump. But what about me and Oliver? We're his sons. It's not right that we get nothing now, Oliver piped up, trying to smooth things over, his voice soft and conciliatory. Mom's still grieving, James. We can sort this out without arguing. James shot him a venomous glare. Easy for you to say. You're not thinking about the future. I leaned against the counter, feeling the weight of their demands crushing me. Your father and I built this life together. He trusted me to handle things. But I hear you, James. It's not my plan to cut you out. What then? We just wait until you think it's a good time to give us our share. James snapped, his voice dripping with impatience. James, watch your tone, I warned, my own patience fraying. I am still your mother. Oliver stepped between us, his hands raised like a referee. Both of you, please, this isn't helping. Mom, maybe there's a middle ground here, he suggested tentatively. Rubbing my temples, I tried to think clearly. Here's what we can do. The apartments your father and I invested in, the ones downtown. Yes, those, James said, his eyes narrowing. I was thinking you each take one. They're yours to live in or rent out. And from the savings, let's say $25,000 each, to help you get started on whatever you need. James chewed on his lip, clearly doing the math in his head. And the rest of the stuff, the house, the money? That stays with you, for now, I said firmly. When I'm gone, it'll come to you, as per your father's wishes. James looked like he wanted to argue more, but Oliver nudged him, silently pleading with him to accept the offer. Let's think about this, James. Mom's still grieving. Man, it's a fair start, James finally nodded grudgingly. Fine, but I want this in writing, Mom. No more surprises. Of course, I agreed, relieved. We'll get everything documented properly. As they left the kitchen, Oliver lingered for a moment. Give her a break, will you? She's doing her best. James muttered something under his breath that I couldn't quite catch, and frankly, didn't really want to. I hoped I was doing the right thing, but only time would tell. James and I weren't always estranged, but he did not pick the right partner. It was a sunny afternoon, a rare kind that makes everything seem all right, when James brought Isabella over to meet me for the first time. They hadn't been dating long, but James was already head over heels. You could tell by the way he was fussing over her, which wasn't like him at all. Dressed to the nines, she breezed into my living room with barely a hello. Nice place you got here, she said, waiting for an invitation to sit. James was grinning like a fool beside her. I forced a smile, trying to be the good host. Thank you, Isabella. Can I get you anything? Coffee, tea? Coffee sounds lovely, she replied, finally settling onto the sofa. Babe, make sure it's black, no sugar. That left me alone with her, sitting in my own living room, feeling like an unwelcome guest. The silence was awkward until she broke it. So, James tells me you're pretty well off. I'm used to a certain standard, you know. My parents made sure of that. That's good to hear, I said, not sure what else to add. She took a sip of her coffee and made a face. It's all right. Anyway, we've been discussing our future together, planning ahead, you know. I was hoping she'd give me some clue about where this conversation was heading. Isabella set her cup down, her eyes gleaming with a calculating light. Yeah. And speaking of planning, we were thinking about the wedding. You know, I want something special. I saw this place, perfect for a rehearsal dinner. It's about $30,000. I choked on my coffee, the liquid burning my throat. Just for the rehearsal dinner, James jumped in, his voice eager and placating. Mom, it's important to Bella. We want to start things off right. I put my cup down, feeling a storm brewing inside. Look, that's a lot of money for a dinner, Isabella. We need to be reasonable. Isabella's face hardened, her eyes flashing with anger. Reasonable? James says you have the money. I don't see why we should compromise on something that important. James was nodding along with her, clearly oblivious to the absurdity of the situation. He knew he was asking too much. I'm all for celebrating, I said, trying to keep my voice even, but I can't justify that kind of expense. Isabella stood abruptly, her voice dripping with venom. I'm not used to compromising on my standards, Eleanor. I was clear with James that I expect a certain lifestyle. James tried to smooth things over, his voice laced with desperation. Mom, maybe we can find a middle ground. There's no middle ground on $30,000 for a dinner, I snapped, losing my patience. Isabella picked up her purse, glaring at me with pure disdain. If that's how it's going to be, then maybe we need to reconsider some things. They left soon after, leaving me sitting there reeling from the encounter. The nerve of that girl, coming into my home, drinking my coffee, and telling me how to spend my money. It felt like a slap in the face, a wake-up call I wasn't ready for. A few days later I was out at the grocery store when James and Isabella decided to drop by again. By the time I got home, Oliver was awkwardly entertaining them in the living room. The atmosphere was thick and tense, the kind that makes you want to turn around and leave, but it was my house, damn it. Isabella, all dolled up as usual, handed me a list as soon as I sat down, my grocery bag still in my arms. Eleanor, we thought a lot about the wedding gifts, and here's what we've settled on. We hope this will be easier for you to handle. I skimmed the list she first handed me. It was surprisingly sensible, kitchen appliances, some nice china, even a couple of pieces of furniture. This seems quite reasonable, I said, feeling a momentary sense of relief. I think these are wonderful choices. Really? James looked at Isabella, a hopeful expression crossing his face. But just as I was about to discuss where we could buy these items, Isabella's expression changed abruptly. Oh, no, this isn't right. Give that back, she said, snatching the list out of my hands and pulling out another sheet of paper. Here's the actual list. This new list was nothing like the first. It included an apartment, a luxury car, an exclusive vacation. My jaw dropped. Is this some kind of joke? Isabella didn't flinch. No joke, Eleanor. These are the gifts we expect. Only the best for our wedding. I looked at James, waiting for him to say something, anything, to suggest he didn't agree with this madness. But he just stood there looking between us, clearly conflicted but silent. I couldn't hold back any longer. James, why are you letting her do this? You know this is unreasonable. Isabella cut in, her voice rising shrilly. This doesn't concern you, Eleanor. You just need to pay up and keep quiet. His face flushed with anger, a flicker of the sun I knew momentarily returning. That's enough, Isabella. You're not going to talk to my mom like that. This is her house, and you're way out of line. You need to leave. The room was thick with tension as James and Isabella gathered their things. Isabella was muttering under her breath, "This is ridiculous. I'll remember this." Sitting down on the couch and I felt the weight of the whole situation pressing down on me. Oliver sat beside me, putting an arm around my shoulders. We'll figure this out, Mom, but you can't let them bully you into giving more than you can. It's not right. He was right, of course, but as I sat there with my son, I couldn't help but worrying about James. How had things gotten so out of hand? How could he not see what this was doing to our family? The silence that followed was filled with unsaid worries and fears for the future. I knew then that this was far from over. It was only going to get tougher from here. The weeks that followed were a constant barrage of phone calls from James, each one more demanding than the last. Mom, you don't understand. I can't look poor next to Bella's family, he'd argue, his voice cracking with stress. You have the money. Why can't you just help me out here? James, it's not about the money. It's about living within your means. Bella's expectations, you can't sustain that, not without going into serious debt. His frustration boiling over. What do you know about it? I'm not going to live like a beggar. I need more from the inheritance now. I've offered to cover half the wedding costs, up to $15,000. That's more than generous. Everything has to be agreed upon with me though. That's nothing. You're just being stingy. Why are you holding out on me? Because it's not just about the money, I replied, my patience wearing thin. It's about not feeding into this. I don't need this, he snapped. I'll handle it my way. Forget you. And then, just like that, the calls stopped. Months passed in silence. Then the phone rang one afternoon, and it was my sister-in-law, Anita. Eleanor, I thought you should know. Her voice was hesitant, careful. James is flying all the wedding guests to Hawaii. He sold his apartment to fund it, and he expects you to get there on your own. He mentioned you weren't interested in helping. I hung up the phone. How could he be so reckless? Later that night, Mom, there's something you need to hear. I recorded their conversation when they were sitting here in the living room. He handed me an audio recorder. We need to squeeze as much as we can out of her, and then cut her off. James's voice responded chillingly. Whatever it takes, Bella. I'm not going to let her control us. If it comes down to it, I'll kick her out in her underwear. I turned off the recorder, my hands trembling. To hear my own son speak like that about me, his mother, it was too much. The room spun as I tried to comprehend the depth of his betrayal. Flying to Hawaii was a decision I didn't make lightly. Oliver was by my side, both of us tense but determined to face whatever awaited us. When we landed and approached the venue, flowers were everywhere, lights strung like stars across the evening sky. As we walked into the gathering, I spotted James and Isabella mingling with guests. They looked like a picture-perfect couple, all smiles and laughter. My heart ached to see my son so lost in this fabricated paradise. Before I could take another step towards them, Isabella spotted us, her smile vanishing, her eyes narrowing with unveiled hostility. You shouldn't be here, she hissed. This is my day, and you're not welcome. Her father, a tall, stern-looking man, stepped forward, his presence demanding respect. Isabella, he said, his tone sharp, that is no way to speak to your guests. Eleanor, please come with us. Let's find a place to sit. They guided us to a table at the edge of the setup, clearly an afterthought, with no proper setting. The ceremony started soon after, with speeches that felt hollow given the tension simmering beneath the surface. Unexpectedly, I was handed the microphone. I stood, my legs shaky, and addressed the crowd. I came here today to wish my son and his new wife a happy future, but I also believe in honesty and integrity, something that's been sorely missing from the events leading up to this day. Isabella's face went from pink to red, her eyes glaring daggers at me. I was asked for money, time, and again, and when I couldn't meet these demands. My voice cracked a bit, but I pressed on. Oliver, seeing my distress, stepped closer, placing a supportive hand on my shoulder. I nodded at him, then turned on the audio recording he had made. Isabella's voice filled the air, cold and calculating, followed by James's agreement, saying he was prepared to leave me with nothing for the sake of his bride. The crowd murmured, the air thick with shocked disapproval. I turned off the recorder, the silence heavy and oppressive. I gave my son an apartment and $25,000, and yet it was never enough. Today, I am making it clear, I will not be treated as an ATM or a thrall. Therefore I am disowning James and Isabella. I wish them well, but from this day forward, I am choosing to remove myself from their lives. The reaction was immediate. Isabella screamed, her voice shrill and wild. You've ruined my wedding, I curse you. After everything that had happened, coming back home was bittersweet. In the quiet, I made a decision that startled even me. I quit my job. I've spent years healing others as a doctor, but now, it was time to heal myself and rebuild the life that the recent storms had scattered. Oliver, with the $25,000 I had given him, poured himself into his work, and it paid off. He started entering tattoo contests. What's happened to James will happen later. Now, with everything you have heard, do you believe I did the right thing disowning my son and daughter-in-law at their wedding? I need some honest feedback. I'm torn between feeling like I protected myself and feeling like I went too far and hurt my son deeply. Was I justified in making such a drastic decision in such a public way? Or should I have handled things differently behind closed doors? Did I enable James's behavior by giving him money in the first place? Or was it a necessary act of generosity to support my sons? Your perspective on this situation would be invaluable as I try to move forward and find peace with everything that has transpired. So please do tell me your thoughts and feelings. No matter how critical you are of me or my choices.